Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Afterlife of Holly Chase. We left off on chapter 23 where Ethan had just been visited by his grandfather, so now Holly is up. Let's jump into it. Chapter 24. Ethan hadn't gone back to sleep after the visit from his grandfather. Not that I could blame him. I remembered exactly what that had been like when I was the Scrooge. Those slow 37 minutes between when Yvonne left me and when the ghost of Christmas past appeared in my room. Wondering if it was a dream or not. Thinking about the strings of pearls that were her sins. Each one counted, she said. Each pearl a person who in life I utterly disregarded. Wondering if I'd gone insane. Watching the minutes flit by on my phone until it was finally 1 o'clock. When all of a sudden my phone had gone dark and then the room had gone so bright. It was in the light that I stepped forward into Ethan's room, the lamp on my head flaring and making it impossible for him to see my face. "Who are you?" he yelled, like my light was a noise he could shout over. He put a hand out to shield his eyes. "What do you want?" I let my light dim a few degrees. The headlamp was still shining, my dress glowing faintly. The belt at my waist twinkling, but now his eyes could somewhat adjust. My mouth was dry. I took a few steps closer to the bed. Ethan didn't shrink back like some of the Scrooges did. He looked up at me, blinking, his mouth falling open in a way that was so uncharacteristically uncool that under any other circumstances I would have laughed. I was struggling to keep my expression neutral as it was. Even though he couldn't see my face in the folds of my robe, I held out my hand to him. "Hello, Ethan," I said in the low voice that I'd been practicing for a few weeks, a voice that was not my own, a voice he wouldn't know. "Wait, is that you, Holly?" Grant said in my ear. Ethan drew in a sharp breath. God, maybe in spite of everything, he recognized me. I forgot my lines for like 60 seconds before I said, "I'm the ghost of Christmas past, the one your grandfather told you about." "Does Holly have a cold?" Grant said. "Her voice sounds funny." "What past?" Ethan asked. "What Christmas?" "Yours." That answer didn't seem to satisfy him. "Who are you really?" He moved like he was going to get up and confront me, but then he realized that he wasn't exactly dressed for company, as in, he was only wearing a pair of boxers under there. "I have a lot of names." I crossed over his dresser and took out a pair of black sweatpants that he often wore to the club. I knew exactly which drawer they'd be in, but all you need to know right now is that I'm your friend. "My friend?" he said slowly. "I am. I've been sitting here to help you." I handed the pants to him and looked away while he pulled them on. "Are you trying a new accent or something?" Grant asked me. "Because I'm not going to lie. It's not working." Ethan stood up. "Come." I held out my hand again. He hesitated, then took it. I worried that the feel of my hand in his felt familiar to him the way it did to me. I started to lead us toward the door, where we'd be transported into the time tunnel and off across time. But suddenly, Ethan stopped and grabbed me by both arms. "Wait," he said. "I'm not going anywhere with you until I know what's going on." "Uh-oh," I heard Grant's voice in my ear. "The Scrooge is getting physical with the lamp." This almost never happened. The Scrooges were usually scared of me, too scared to do anything but what I told them. "Tell me what's happening," Ethan demanded. "Tell me." "Ethan." "Do you need to use to tase him?" Grant asked. "Then we'll have to use the forget serum and the stuff and, that would be a mess. But we could totally tase him." "No," came Bob's voice. He was also linked into this feed. "No, just wait." Ethan shook me a little and my hood fell back. I turned my lamp up so he couldn't look directly at me. "This is a joke, right?" he said angrily, his fingers biting into my arms. "I know it's not real. What's going on?" "It's not a joke," I said. "Wait." His eyes widened. "Tori?" he whispered. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. I'd been saying all this time that he wouldn't recognize me, that he simply couldn't recognize me in my crazy costume and with my altered voice. I told myself that so I could justify hanging out with him. So I could tell myself that I wasn't really jeopardizing my time with him on Christmas Eve. But that was dumb. We ghosts can appear however we wish, I said softly. Say what now? Grant was confused. But you look just... Ethan began. I have chosen this form so that you would trust me. It was all I could think of to do. I'd pretend I was just wearing Holly like a costume. That kind of thing happened in movies, right? I am the ghost of Christmas past. Your past. I said again, emphasizing the word your. You said that already, he relaxed slightly, but I could tell that this was still royally freaking him out. Okay, so no taser, Grant said. No, repeated Boz. What did you say to him about trust? I didn't quite catch it. Come with me, I said to Ethan. Ethan's hand dropped away from me. Fine, whoever you are, let me at least put on a shirt. I waited while he tugged a t-shirt over his head and put on a pair of woolen clogs he used for slippers. Do you have a robe? I asked him. It will be cold where we're going. He shook his head. Where are we going exactly? I took his hand again and pulled him toward the door. It was glowing. He reached out and touched the wood as if he'd never seen it before. It was warm to the touch, like there was fire on the other side. Here we go, I said, and opened the door and walked us through. We were instantly surrounded by a formless, foggy white. The time tunnel was like a long hallway with two ends that could be flipped around. On one side was a waiting room where I was sure Dave and Blackpool were already hanging out, watching the monitors. On the other side was, of course, an archway that would take us across town. On Christmas, we filled the tunnel with fog and snow, so you couldn't really see anything unless you knew specifically that it was there. It was like we were walking through a cloud. Ethan stumbled, not sure where to put his feet. I stopped and put my hand on his shoulder. Look at me, I directed, and he did. Hold on to my arm, and you won't fall. Okay, he said. We started walking again. Ethan stayed close. I felt the change in the air when we crossed under the archway and the tunnel was activated. A subtle vibration under my feet and an electric hum as we shifted through time and space. Then we were in a little boy's bedroom. It looked like it was straight out of one of those pricey kitty catalogs. The walls were painted blue with a definite astronaut theme. Star charts on the wall, a picture of a rocket ship blasting off, a lamp on the bedside table that cast a pattern of stars onto the ceiling, and there was a large letter E posted above the bed. Beside me, Ethan tensed up again. This is my old room. Yes. It's just like I remember it. He crossed over the dresser, which had a fish tank bubbling on it, and two fat black goldfish, like exactly. What were their names? I asked him. Sharky and Bones, he answered automatically, and then seemed surprised that he still known the answer after all this time. He turned in a slow circle, drinking in the details of his old life. The quilt with the solar system stitched onto it, the colored balls hanging from fish lining from the ceiling to represent the planet. He stopped when he got to the series of black marks on the side of the closet door frame, a growth chart, going back to when he was 3 years old. His fingers brushed with marks as he read the dates. How is this possible? He breathed. We can't really be there, can we? I mean, we sold that place. We moved away. I could see that he was starting to believe it was real. Stephanie had been right when she'd made that argument. It was the details that made the whole thing convincing. Those details like Sharky and Bones that couldn't be fabricated. The door was suddenly flung open, and a little boy stomped in, scowling. It was Ethan at age 8. He was mad about something, furious in fact. He kicked his favorite stuffed doggy out of the way and threw himself onto the bed. He was a miniature version of Ethan, I knew. Same cloudy eyes, same way of furrowing his eyebrows, but his dark brown hair was overgrown and his elbows were scrawny, and he was missing one of his front teeth. Ethan stared at him, speechless, because maybe we might have been able to fake his old bedroom, but no way we'd be able to fake this. That's me, he said. That's you, I confirmed. He took a step toward the kid on the bed. Can he hear me? No. I snapped my fingers next to the little boy's head, but he didn't react. All that you see here is just a shadow of the things that have happened before. The people here won't be able to see or hear you. The point is for us to see and hear them. He was still staring at the younger version of himself. I think I remember this day, he murmured. It was right before Christmas break, 2nd grade, the day of the science fair. I did a project on space. I gestured around him. He looked at the floor and nodded like he was embarrassed. It was a phase. I was going to be the next Neil Armstrong. Collins Mars. Save our dying world. My science project was on the existence of water on Mars. I worked on it for weeks. He snorted. My poster said, "What happened to the little green men?" It hadn't gone well, though, obviously, because the younger Ethan was muttering and punching his fist into his rocket ship pillow. I didn't win, Ethan explained. I got something like an honorable mention. The every kid wins a prize kind of thing. There was a light tapping on the door. Go away, said Kid Ethan. The door opened a crack. Hey, buddy. I don't want to interrupt you at whatever you're doing, but I thought maybe you want to talk. Okay, little Ethan grumbled as the door opened wider and revealed Ethan's dad. I took a moment to really look at him. I'd seen him before in Ethan's mind lots of times, but this was different. In this place, he was entirely real. No part of a reconstructed memory. He was tall like Ethan, with the same brown hair and blue eyes. It was the eyes, really, that gave away the family resemblance. He was wearing a suit, but he'd taken the jacket and tie off and rolled up the sleeves to his elbows. His shoes, I noticed, were a little worn and needed a polish. His watch couldn't have cost more than $100. His hair needed a trim. Still, there was something warm about him, something approachable and kind. At the sight of his father, the present Ethan suddenly looked like he'd been given an electric shock. He went completely silent. Tough day? Ethan Winters II asked little Ethan Winters III. The kid didn't answer. He just punched the pillow again. I saw your project this afternoon, his dad continued lightly, coming into the room and shutting the door behind him. And let me just say, it was awesome. It was better than the one about magnets, Kid Ethan burst out. Who cares about stupid magnets? Magnets suck rocks, his dad agreed solemnly. So why did the dumb magnets win first place and I didn't win anything? Are the judges mental? His dad sat next to little Ethan on the bed and roughed the boy's hair. I don't know, buddy. It's all subjective, I guess. What's subjective? It means that everybody have their own opinion and everybody thinks differently. So they all come up with different conclusions. The boy shook his head. My poster looked way better. Anybody with half a brain could see that. Mom bought me the cutout letters and the spray paint. The one about magnets looked cheap. He just wrote on it in a marker. Hey, have you heard that phrase, don't judge a book by its cover? His dad countered. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much money you spend on something or how fancy it is. It's what's inside that counts. Maybe that kid had the best explanation of how magnets work that the judges had ever heard. We don't know. Little Ethan was still scowling. Even back then, he was stubborn. Here's what I do know, his dad said now. I know I'm very proud of you for all the work you did. I know that you are now like an expert on the planet Mars, and that is so ridiculously boss. That's the point of having the science fair. When you think about it, you get to learn all the amazing things that there are to know about science. When you're an astronaut, I bet you'll look back on this day as a turning point in your life. I guess, the kid mumbled. His dad clapped a hand on the boy's shoulder. You know what would be great? How about you and I go down to the Christmas tree lot after dinner? You can use that sharp scientific mind of yours to figure out which tree will be the best one to put in our living room. 8-year-old Ethan brightened visibly at the idea. Just you and me? Yep, me and you. No girls allowed. No girls allowed? The older Ethan repeated softly. Just me and you. I remember that. We should measure how tall the ceiling is, little Ethan suggested eagerly, so we can make sure not to get a tree that's too big. Ethan's dad lifted his hand for a high five, and little Ethan giggled and slapped his hand. I knew you were the perfect person to be in charge of this very important job, his dad said. Come on, Chief. Let's go help your mom set the table and we'll plan our strategy. And just like that, they left the room. Little Ethan smiling again and his eyes almost glowing with excitement. His bad mood dissipated like a spent storm cloud. Grown-up Ethan didn't say anything after they'd gone. He just kept staring at the door. Your dad was a good man, I think, I said. He nodded and swallowed hard. He always made me feel like I could do anything. I can be anything I decided to be. An astronaut, a fireman, a pirate. He wiped his eyes on the sleeve of his tee and turned away from me. The President of the United States. Oh boy, I knew everyone in the go room would be freaking out over this little remark. He died when you were 12, right? I asked softly. A freak accident. Because God wouldn't give Ethan's dad 1 minute. We should go, I said. There are other things that you're supposed to see. He didn't argue. He took my hand again when I offered it and let me lead him back through the portal and into the time tunnel again, where we wasn't even a little bit of a lag before we were swept forward nearly 2 years to the Christmas party with his mom and dad and sister all wearing terrible sweaters. The minute we got there, Ethan went straight to his dad and followed him around, which wasn't a problem exactly, except that we were supposed to be focusing on his mom. I understood why he did it, though. I knew what it had been like for me to see my mother again, even if it was just a shadow of things that have been. Seeing her had made me remember all that I slowly been forgetting, like the shape of her lips when she smiled, the way she smelled like jasmine, the habit she had of clicking her fingernails on the table. All of those things about her had been fading out of my memory, but then suddenly she was right there in front of me, beautiful and vibrant and alive. You should redirect Ethan back to his mother, Boz reminded me through the earbud. We're getting off topic. I led Ethan back toward the kitchen. His mom was there wearing her apron and dancing to the song, It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year, while she poured lime soda into a bowl of fruit punch. Your mom liked a good party, didn't she? I observed. Ethan's mouth turned up in the corner in the half-amused way he had. Yes, she did. She still does. And my grandma. I knew he was thinking about his grandmother's party invitation. It seemed like a waste, though, I said. Look at all this, the decorations, the food, the music, and the lights, and the fizzy punch. All this time and expense for a few hours celebrating. This was part of the Scrooge script, actually. You criticized the Fezziwig, called the party frivolous or wasteful, and then the Scrooge always felt compelled to argue on the Fezziwig's behalf, just a little reverse psychology. Ethan was no different, apparently. He frowned. She liked to see other people happy. What's wrong with that? It didn't matter what her job was or where my dad was working or how much money we had, because we didn't have a lot at this point, as you can see. But she'd always go through so much effort so that we could have a good time. She was happy when we were happy. She had a generous heart, I agreed. Back then, I added. He nodded thoughtfully. Back then, he said, almost to himself. The breakup scene, which was what was next, was always the hardest one to get through, probably because the bell tends to tell it like it is. Jack was no exception. I'm not going to come back here again, she was saying as President Ethan and I was watching from the corner of his grandfather's office. You've changed. I don't even recognize you anymore. Call me if you decide to grow a soul. Oh, come off it, sis, Past Ethan spat back at her. They were in a full-out fight, part of this discussion now. Like you haven't benefited all your life from our family's wealth. What pays for Vizar? Who pays for you to pretend to be an artist so you can afford to sit around dabbling with the paints and moaning about the tragic state of the world? At least I'm honest about it. I like money. I want to make more of it. I want to take what grandfather built and make it into something huge and indestructible and a legacy for us all. But seriously, why am I supposed to feel guilty about having money? I remember myself saying in my own version of this moment. The world runs on money. That's just how it is. And Ro had looked so sad then. And she said, do you remember what it was like before, Holly? When we used to watch TV with the sound turned off and make up the dialogue? Or we'd go to the pet store and name all the fish? We'd hang out on the bench and build weird sand creatures. We'd write songs. None of that was about money. Remember? It was about us, she said. And then she'd ask me what happened to that girl. She said she liked her. She liked me, even when there really hadn't been anything special to like. I had been so stupid not to understand then what she meant. I forced my attention back to Ethan, who was still getting chewed out by his sister. You should hear yourself, Jack gave a disbelieving laugh. You know, you used to be sweet. You were always stubborn and you always had a temper, but there was this sweet side to you that made up for it. And you were snarky and hilarious and fun to be around. But now you're just this stand-in for Grandpa. It's sad. You're the one who lost your sense of humor. Jack threw up her hands. You just pitch a fit over how your meat was cooked. Who cares? You're a vegetarian, aren't you? You're unbelievable. She drew herself up until she was standing as tall as she could and looked him in his eyes. It's probably better for both of us if I don't see you anymore. You could pretend you disowned me or whatever, like you're an only child. I think that would suit you. I don't want to be a part of this legacy. Not anymore. Fine. Fine, then go, past Ethan snarled. You always were a quitter. I glanced over at my Ethan. He hadn't said anything throughout the entire conversation. He just watched it all replay, his jaw set, his eyes distant. Like I said, Jack murmured as she moved toward the door, I hope you're happy in this life, but you won't be. Then she was gone. Past Ethan stared after her for a minute and then swept all the papers and office supplies off his grandfather's desk onto the floor. He kicked the fancy metal trash can in the corner, leaving a huge dent in both the trash can and the wall, and then he stormed out of the room and slammed the door behind him. Are we done now? President Ethan asked grimly. Almost, I answered. Have you seen your sister since that day? He shook his head. She graduated with honors, I informed him, and she's an art teacher at a middle school not far from where you grew up, giving back to her community. Eating organic, volunteered to read for the blind, even. She's getting married this spring. Good for her, Ethan said tonelessly. Now, are we done? Ethan, it's important that you... No, I get it, he interrupted. No need to explain. This was the part where you show me how bad I am, so I feel ashamed, right? So I'll promise to be better? Well, yes. I told you. These are just the shadows of things that have already happened, I responded dutifully. If you don't like it, don't blame me. It's your life. Yes, it's my life. It's my business. So why are you butting in, he asked. You think I'm some kind of villain who needs to be taught a lesson? The Scrooges were always mad at this point. They felt attacked, exposed. They lashed out because they could see, maybe even for the first time, how they were responsible for their own misery. It was a bitter pill. I could still taste it in my mouth even 6 years later. I don't think you're a villain, Ethan, I said. You're a good person who's had a difficult past, and, I swallowed, I understand that. Really, I do. His eyes narrowed. What are you doing to me? What is this? I shook my head. It's your past, I said. It is what it is. At that moment, I let my lamp flare up again at the level that would blind him. Totally white out. That was supposed to be my exit. I had to leave him now. This was probably the last time I'd ever see him, I realized, and I was struck by the urge to kiss him, to press my lips onto his one last time. But instead, I just squeezed his hand and let go. Goodbye, Ethan, I thought. I wish the best life. I swallowed back and sobbed as I fled into the time tunnel. I caught just a glimpse of Dave's green robe as we passed each other by. It was his turn now. Time to deal with the present, and I was officially in Ethan's past. Well, everyone, it looks like we have came to the ending of chapter 24. Please join me for the next chapter, and let's see how it all ends. Until then, see you soon.